Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. It's Gord, your hurtin' hippie, and today it's a political show. But I ask you, please don't go. I may have something for you, don't you know? So stick around and help me, eh? I ruined the rhyme on the last. I did it on purpose. Anyways, first I gotta tell YouTube the following is an op-ed. It is just me talking to anyone who's going to listen about the upcoming Canadian election, my opinions, my hopes, my wishes, my fears, and my dreams. So, YouTube, bye. The rest of you, hi. It's time to talk. There is a misnomer. I watch Canadian news, but by YouTubers, Moose on the Loose, Portuguese Pie, a few people like that, Clinton Jaws, good people who deliver the news that our media won't deliver. So, I have a million things running through my head that I'd like to tell you about. First of all, why I have to go to YouTube to get proper news. Second of all, what spawned this? If you are my subscriber and you're going, oh, damn it, Gord, not another political. Folks, we're in the middle of an election. It's an important time in Canada. In my 63 years in this country, in this life, I have never seen a more important election than now. Sitting on your ass and staying home and going, well, I know enough people are going to vote the way we hope they vote, so I'll stay home. No, it's time to get out. And that brings me to things that I keep hearing on these channels, is that old people like me are CBC watchers, stuck at home, watch CBC all day, believe all the bull, and the Canadian polls on the election all show Liberal and Conservatives in the dead heat, or even the Liberals in a lead. And they're blaming it because they say, a few people, and I'm not going to point any fingers at any one creator, because their misunderstanding of the situation is my ability to teach. And that almost sounds arrogant, but they're young. I'm not. I know an awful lot of old people. I'm a hippie. Most of the old people I know are hippies as well. Most of them are liberal, but are leaving the liberals currently because the liberals left them. I don't want to get too deep into that. What I want to get into is this categorizing us as a feeble group, a very large amount of people who have been indoctrinated by the CBC, Canada Broadcasting Corporation, owned by the government for all our lives. And so therefore, that's all we listen to, that's all we believe, and that's why the polls are as they are and the election is tight. First of all, the election is not tight. I said it when the US election was going on and they were saying it's tight, Kamala might even win. And I was saying, stop believing the polls. The liberal machine, the progressive machine, the Marxist machine has captured most media, has captured most institutions, especially education and information, and have grabbed the hearts and minds of those sheep that we used to always laugh at. They've now got a lot of power, and we've got to take that power back. So I beg those creators, those Canadians, those people who group us older people into one big group and say that we're just CBC watchers, so we're going to vote Liberal, we're going to answer the phone when a pollster calls. I gotta tell you, the pollsters were wrong in the US. They're going to be wrong here because they're paid for by the machine. You can't believe them. Prior to, when there was nothing to really care about, they just did their job, put out a poll once a week. Conservatives were leading by 25, 30 basis points. Now it's a tie. Now it's a tie when they've put a guy named Mark Carney that most Canadians don't even know, a central banker from London and Europe who calls himself European, who hasn't lived in Canada for 10 years, and he's been placed into the position of Prime Minister, and he expects to just become the Prime Minister, and you expect that 50% of Canadians believe that? Stop believing the polls, but also speaking as one of those old people. I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. Some of you grew up in the 50s. Most of us are of a new. The boomers are not the typical old people. I would believe that if it were my parents, who are gone now, they liked the CBC, but I grew up with parents who liked the CBC and the CTV and mainstream media. I did not. So I stayed away from that kind of stuff. I stayed away from news. I never believed a government-owned media anyway. I always looked for information elsewhere. Fast forward to 2025, and most of us, even if infirmed, even if in a senior center, we're not sitting around like they used to show, because my dad has been in one just recently. He passed away 2 years ago. They don't sit around in one big room and watch one TV that's on CBC and all think the same way. So simple for every single room to have their own screen hooked up to the internet, and they're watching what they want to watch, and their kids have helped them. So if your older people are only watching the CBC, well, you need to do them a favor and get them away from that and show them the real world. But I want to talk to you old people, you people like me. One, if you watch the CBC, you got to think to yourself, they get billions of dollars every year from the Canadian government. That's one. Two, Pierre Poilievre has announced that he will defund them. He has said, we're going to quit giving them money. Let them live on their own. If they have a good network, they will thrive. If they have, as they do now, if they don't change, they will die. But that's the way the market works, is we shouldn't have government-owned entities. And even though I grew up, my first 20 years or so, I was liberal, and slowly, like happens to most people, as you start paying bills, paying taxes, noticing the bullshit around you, and getting away from the school influence, you start to realize that you've been duped and that things are not the way they are, and you start to turn conservative. It's a natural progression of life. Some people are shielded from that progression, and some people carry that liberal mindset throughout their lives. I beg you, get away from the CBC. At least when you listen to them, suggest to yourself, they're full of shit. They are going to back the liberal candidate because the conservative candidate will make them work for a living for once. Or maybe even their job will go away. What do I think about? You might be sitting there and saying, you may not like the CBC, Gord, but I do. And I like that we have a media that represents Canadian people, and that's why we contribute our taxes towards it. And I would say maybe in the past, but they are not a part of. If you go, as I have, to Europe quite a few times, they don't think of Canadians and think Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They don't think anything about our media. They think wonderful, nice people that say sorry too often, friendly people who will be your friend to the end, and a wonderful, wild country, and that we're all lumberjacks. I'm a lumberjack. Sorry. So they are not part of what makes Canada Canada. It's a media firm. We do not need to pay a media firm to carry the government's water. It's time to put that away, and if the Liberals have a good platform, let them live or die by their platform. Let them live or die by their past. The problem is the CBC expecting that money from, if a Liberal government gets in, they will ignore the crap that is going on. They will downplay Poilievre's rallies, thousands of people. Carney's rallies, 50s of people. 50s. And that's not a word, but I'm using it. They won't report on that. They don't report, look it up yourself, about a Liberal member of Parliament, a minister of this government, Chang, calling for the... Okay, look it up. He called out outright his opponent as being a dissident of China and put his life in danger. And not only did the leader not fire him, he has since resigned. He realizes the error in his ways. But the CBC was carrying his water too. And that's my opinion, YouTube. I don't have to support my opinion. I'm an old man. I've lived a lot of years. I've seen a lot of elections come and go. And I've seen terrible commercials against the side I care about. But these aren't terrible. These aren't rude. These aren't mean. They're wrong. They're not only misinformation. I hate using that word. They're lies. So, old people, get off your ass. Talk to your kids. Talk to your grandkids. Make sure they vote. And if they tell you, hey, I'm voting Liberal, question them. Why? Start the conversation. They, of course, have every right to vote any way they want. But if they've been misled or just following their parents or just going against their parents, as most young people do, as I did, this is a time to think, liberal, I'm not liberal, it don't matter. The Liberals, a decade of Liberals in Canada, our economy grew less than 2% over that whole decade, where the U.S. economy usually grows 2 to 3% per year and has grown 40 times faster. We have the slowest GDP growth as a nation of the top 40 nations in the world. I might get fact-checked on that, but it's pretty damn close. We have not grown in a decade. It's time to bring Poilievre in. It's time for some common sense and putting Canada first, not the rest of the world. Canada first, and always. Much love.